irrational, skeptic. I trust no one. No one's ever going to change my thinking. Not by this much. So there.
We are a big city with a suburban mentality. And I think that's probably what's held up the issue of mass transit.
A lot of people move to Arlington, and the fact that it doesn't have a bus system is a positive thing. System. They look at Arlington, they say we're 50th biggest city in the United States, instead of seeing Arlington as what it is. We are an upper middle class to lower middle class city, and we do very well with that. We're going to continue to grow. So the issue is, how do we grow forward? Do we pretend that we're a manufacturing urban city with an urban center with all of those problems and dive that direction? Or are we going to say, no, we're the world's largest suburb. There will always be a world's largest suburb. What will that suburb look like?
This is the world of 1960. The rights of way have been so rooted as to displace undesirable slum areas for hundreds of miles around.
What will its transportation system look like?
This is the American dream of freedom on wheels. An automotive age, traveling on time-saving superhighways.
Cars from the farm roads and feeder lanes join the motorway traffic at the same speed as cars traveling in the lane they enter. An efficient combination of motor, air, and rail transportation in the world of tomorrow.
What's happened in the last 40 years is every bit as important in the history of urban growth, in that it's changed the morphology of land use, and that the assumption is you take care of growth and everything else falls in place. It works at some level, and some levels it creates a new set of problems. But for a long time it grew up as a small agricultural town. After World War II, though, the opportunity was offering itself for Arlington to become a new kind of place, a decentralized kind of city that did not have the traditional focus of a Dallas or Fort Worth. The real problem with getting a public transportation system in Arlington is we weren't built around a public transportation system. Arlington took growth at a time when the automobile dominated. It's really hard to develop a system that makes sense because we don't have a central core, and that's what public transportation does. It takes the people from the periphery to the core. Just as the railroad and the streetcar shaped cities in the early 20th century, the automobile really shapes Arlington and determines what's located where.
Over space, man has begun to win victory. Space living, space for working, space for pay. Residential, commercial, and industrial areas all have been separated for greater efficiency and greater convenience.
Remember, for much of American history, centralization was bad, and we kept talking about the need to decentralize. Well, when Arlington was growing, the opportunity to decentralize was embraced readily, and before long it encompassed almost 100 square miles.
And at the helm while all this growth and change took place, Tom Vandergriff, or Tommy as many called him. The longest serving mayor in Arlington's history, Tom J. Vandergriff probably influenced the course of the city's history more than any other single individual. He was instrumental in bringing a General Motors assembly plant to Arlington in 1953. Early housing additions for the plant's workers spurred the city's transformation from a largely agrarian center to a transportation-related suburb. The future with Tom Vandergriff was looking bright for Arlington.
Even though Arlington experienced tremendous growth for many years and great prosperity, there came a time in the late 1990s, early 2000, that Arlington was in a situation that probably was not so good economically. Housing stock was deteriorating. We wanted more high-income housing, wasn't being built. Some people were actually moving away from Arlington, moving to more affluent communities. So all the growth that we attracted also had a lot of problems.
I don't know that you could have projected then the growth that we've experienced. in just Arlington. I just, it was almost at that point in time, it's get them here, get them around, do what we can do. And we did it. And our leaders, I think they were doing the very best that they could have done. And I think they did a good job. It's just that it's evolved and we've grown and we're an older city and we've got to make some changes now.
We remember it, what it was in 1953, but it's not 1953 anymore.
Unfortunately, there are people who live in Arlington who believe it's the same way it was back in the 50s. It was a city that was predominantly white and predominantly middle class, and very few minorities lived, but things have changed. And they remember the city the way it was. And when they hear the word transit, all they could think of is, we don't want to be like Dallas. Well, anytime you have a transit campaign, unfortunately, you're going to be faced in the opposition with certain well-worn strategies on how to defeat it. And we knew going into it that we were going to get all kinds of false representations from the opposition to the voters about what a transit system would do for a city.
You're going to bring up other people, into your city that can't currently afford to live in your city. And that's why I kind of talk about this as a mutation of the city instead of an evolution. You're going to make it easier for people who are living on the dole to live in Arlington. And those people have said in interview after interview that they want to live in Arlington. And if you go back and look at that clip, I don't want those people living in my city, because what they're saying, they're on government housing, they're on chips, they're not going to add to, they're not going to hire me, they're not going to work for me. They're going to come into my city and ask me to pay for their lives.
If you're a Facebook guy, my name is Warren Norred, N-O-R-R-E-D. You're trolling for friends, I'm your man.
There is a big segment of poverty here because of a lack of transportation to better themselves. There are people who can make better money if they were allowed to be more mobile in the city.
There's a hidden assumption in there that if I know that there are people who live below the poverty line, then I will support a bus system. Not at all. I will support private enterprise and private means of charity. That's what I support.
There are some people who may need it, but they're not going to be the one to pay for it.
It's just every time you turn around, they have their hand out. And I'm getting tired of waking up in the middle of the night with somebody's hand in my pocket. That's basically it. If people want public transportation in the city of Arlington, all they have to do is pay for it. But don't ask the taxpayer to pay 82 cents out of every dollar to run the public transportation.
Jobs they otherwise couldn't take. It means our workforce lives off a paycheck instead of a welfare check.
People like me, I vote against it because of the economics. And the perversion of the city is a minor concern.
Why do you think that the financial arguments kind of took a two-page back seat to the more socially suggestive claims?
I think that in general, in a campaign, you have to get people's attention before they'll listen to you and talk to you. And you have a lot of people who don't think in economic terms. And so it's a campaign. If you don't have a cartoon or you don't have something to get people's attention just right up front, then they're not going to get to the rest of it.